Welcome, everyone. My name's Amanda Harris. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I have the great pleasure of having a conversation today with Elizabeth Dall, fellow exercise physiologist and health and wellness coach. And we're going to talk a little bit about staying motivated through your exercises and even post-rehab work, or you might be going through physical therapy right now, so maybe staying motivated through your therapy work. Anyway, Elizabeth Dall, I met when she asked me to be on her podcast a few weeks ago. And I am going to link that podcast in the description because if you are interested in what I have to talk about with regard to back pain and recovering from back pain, you won't want to miss that conversation. It was a really terrific one. But I so enjoyed talking to her, and I think she's got so much good information for you that I asked her if she would have a conversation with me for our audience. So without further ado, Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind telling everybody about yourself and the work you do.
I would love to, but before I do, I want to tell everyone that was probably one of my favorite guest episodes I've had, actually having you on. And so I'm
Oh,
just telling everyone, go listen because it was so good. And I was almost like selfishly in it for myself. I'm like, oh, I love this. I'm eating this up. So thank you. Yeah, I'm Elizabeth. I am a nutrition, behavior change coach, food freedom expert. So my expertise really is in behavior change and the psychology behind behavior change and how do we stick to healthy habits long term so that we can live the lifestyle of wellness that we want to live. And that's the majority of what I do.
yes. And I think you do something that I think is so hard. I remember when I first started out as an exercise physiologist, we have all these different directions we can go in. And I remember I had lots of people who asked me if I was going to go into that sort of weight loss behavior change space. And I thought that was a really hard space to be in. So my hat is off to you because I just think that's a tough nut to crack. But you have had great success in that space. And it's one of the reasons I'm excited to have you on today because I think the folks who work with me in a post rehab space, or even who are just working on their own stuff, maybe they're seeing a different practitioner somewhere else. But I think what we struggle with is the thought that, as much as a practitioner may give you exercises and ask you to do some movement practice a certain number of days a week, when you start feeling better, sometimes it's easy to sort of let that slide and go back to your normal activities and the things that you enjoy doing. And you sort of forget the hard stuff or the tedious stuff or the stuff that takes a little bit of extra time. And I think really when we're talking about moving forward after pain, what we really have to wrap our heads around is this isn't like a 6 week or 12 week or whatever it is regimen of exercises and then you can go back to the way it was, because the body, it keeps moving forward. It keeps evolving through space and time, and do I dare say aging. And so what we're really talking about is behavior change at the end of the day, right? Like we're talking about incorporating something new into the lifestyle. Even if we're already in love with exercise or activity, we're super active people. I hear this all the time, but I'm already super active. I have to add something else. So if you would, I would like to hear about your journey, because it sounds like you've had a really interesting journey through this in sort of some similar ways. So if you wouldn't mind telling us about your journey and how you started to have to do behavior change, even though you were already sold on the idea of exercise and healthy eating.
Yeah. So it's funny because if it was as simple as follow this plan, there wouldn't be a need for really any of us, right? Because
Right.
I mean, especially in this day and age, we could get AI to write any plan that we wanted and we wouldn't need behavior change experts or anything like that. And
Yeah.
I found myself in that same loop where it was like, okay, I was learning in college what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be eating this way and I was supposed to be exercising this way. And there were certain rules, right? And
Yeah.
guidelines that you learn. And what happened was I was like, okay, I'm going to follow these. And then I couldn't because either I wasn't like, I wasn't motivated, right? Life got in the way. It was extra time to incorporate this,
Yep.
extra energy. And the crazy thing is my clients at the time were also struggling with it. I mean, we were both struggling at the same time. This was my very first, before I even got the behavior change, certification and stuff like that, it was personal training. And it was just like, here's the plan, follow it. And I was doing the same thing to myself and I still wasn't getting results. And so there has to be that mindset shift that, okay, I recognize that my life isn't perfect and it's busy and I'm going to have days where I'm tired and I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed and I'm going to have days that are hard. Okay. And a perfect plan doesn't fit into an imperfect life. It just doesn't. And when we realize that that's, that we're going to approach it from an imperfect perspective, but consistent. I always love this combination, imperfect and consistent. Once we understand that that's the way it's going to be, then our mindset begins to shift and we're like, okay, I can stick at this knowing that I'm not setting myself up for failure by trying to be perfect at it. And that's really what sets that cycle of not being able to follow through because we try to start perfectly.
That is huge. I love this imperfect and consistent. So tell us a little bit about the types of setbacks that you experienced, or maybe some of your clients experienced, and how you got to the other side of them. Because I think it's so tempting when we're on this behavior change journey. Again, if you're thinking in that perfectionist point of view, like you slip up. I mean, yesterday was Easter for those of us who observe Easter, of course, and that's a big meal day for a lot of us. And oh boy, I tell you, my daughter was in the candy like there's no tomorrow. But I did have a piece of carrot cake, and I could have like really gone into some kind of a blame thing about that because I try to watch what I eat. But how do you take something like that where you slipped or you allowed something? Maybe you purposefully allowed it. I purposefully allowed it. I mean, it was carrot cake.
Yes.
But how do you move forward from something like that?
Yeah, I mean that's the first thing is there's food is meant to be enjoyed, right? And having a good relationship with food is really important. And the more restriction we put on ourselves, the more likely we are to binge. And so, it's interesting because it's not so much about the behavior.
Mhm,
So much we look at it as, oh, I just need to change this. I just need to do it. I just need to set a habit tracker. But I'm
mhm,
actually going to go back a little ways and look at the root cause here. Usually, and I would say maybe even specific to your audience, there is a relationship with body issue going on here.
mhm.
Frustration. Sorry, I just got a cough.
Yep.
I just inhaled wrong.
Well, it's big time pollen season where I am, so there's lots of coughing going on around me these days.
That's actually never happened to me on a podcast episode. I apologize. Anyway, so the root cause really is this relationship with body and our body having some sort of dissonance there. My body is broken, right? A lot of times maybe they're coming to you because they're in pain
Yes.
or
Mhm,
something's not working the right way. And we start from that space of, well, I need to escape my body. I need to get out of it, right? Or weight loss. Weight loss is very
mhm,
similar to this idea. It's
mhm.
not right. Something's
Yeah.
not right. Something's wrong. And when we approach it from that place, all of our habits are shame based. I
Mm,
should or shouldn't do this. That's bad for me. That's good, and everything we assign value to. But when we look at the root of it, which is creating a relationship with our body that we're going to have forever, right? This is the body that you have, and it's going to go through injuries and it's going to go through aging and lots of other things. When we look at um, creating that relationship and saying, okay, we're working on this together. Like you and I, we're together. We're committed to a positive outcome.
yeah.
It shifts our mentality. I mean, huge. It's a big shift because all of a sudden we go from, I've got to escape my body. I don't like this. I'm frustrated with this to, hey, you know what? We're going to work on this together. And that
Mhm,
is going to mean some hard things. That's going to mean doing things that maybe we didn't want to, right? I mean, I'm the first to admit I don't want to do structural exercises. That's not
Yep.
fun. That takes extra
No.
time,
Hmm.
right? And I want to go out and run or I want to go on a hike and I barely have enough time for that. So it's really hard to think, how do I incorporate this? But when we've created that connection of, yeah, but my body's worthy of this extra because it helps me show up in a better way here.
Hmm.
That's the connection that we've created. But when we're separated from our body and we feel very like, I don't like you, I don't really want to, I'm frustrated,
Hmm.
any little thing that might be nourishing and nurturing that's not, I don't even want to use the word vain, but I kind of do, right? Vain of like, I can't get a PR or I can't um, do the things that I love without this, then we don't want to do it. But when we have
Yep.
that relationship, we realize how important those things are and how essential. It's kind of like flossing your teeth, right? I mean, I don't like flossing my teeth. I don't know if anyone really likes brushing and flossing their teeth, right? But I do know that it's a big picture of my overall health and it
Yep.
helps me with my smile and it helps me, with cavities. And so it's when I know that, oh, my body is worthy of being taken care of in this way, then it becomes just a natural habit almost.
Yeah, so the mind shift you're talking about sounds like it's more of stewarding your body
Yeah.
and less of trying to get the run in or the whatever in. And it's not that we don't do that too, because that's the fun part, and maybe that's how we start to look at it is I need to do these things to take care of my body so that I can then enjoy XYZ activity. And so that motivation piece is coming from a root mindset. Is that what you're describing there?
Absolutely. You have an identity, right? It's a different
Yeah.
it's a deep identity, I think,
Mhm.
right? It's kind of like I'll give you an analogy, the foundation of a house or a house. Let's just say a house.
Mhm.
If you come in and you start building a house and you start putting up walls and windows, unless you've laid a really solid foundation on that house, they're going to tip over. There's no amount of nails that are going to help you hold that house up. But once you've built that foundation and you can kind of manage that foundation, right? We have to make sure that there's no cracks in it. It's not starting to crumble. We have to repair it sometimes, right? It's an ongoing process. But once that foundation is there, that's where those walls and those windows and the beauty, we can add more things to it. But if we forget about the root, the depth, the foundation, it just all crumbles all the time. We're just
Yeah.
constantly trying to fix things.
Yeah. So is there a way you help clients connect the dots between, like, I don't want to say a crack in their foundation, but let's say they fall off the train, right? They fall off their plan and they're starting to go into some of that shame, blame, feeling like a failure type stuff. And it's, coming from that whole perfectionist mindset. I totally identify with that. I have a perfectionist demon myself. But how do you help a client because it's so natural, isn't it? You fall off your plan and you start going, oh, and you certainly don't want them to do the whole, oh, screw it thing and walk away from the plan entirely, which is awfully tempting to say, well, I couldn't make that work, so I'm just not going to try anymore. So how do you help steer somebody back? What are some tactics or tips that you found really successful that help people get back on track?
So I have a unique definition of sabotage, and
Mm.
it's the expectation of perfection. If you
Ooh.
expect perfect outcomes, you are 100% going to sabotage your results. So, and that's where that shame, blame, game comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But when we understand that we are on a journey that has bumps and, ups and downs, we start to learn how to ride the bumps. And one analogy that I teach my clients is the principle of spiraling up. So I like to think of a little spring, like a little spiral spring.
Uh-huh.
And at any given moment, you usually have a pivotal choice, right? You have a choice to be like, I'm going to choose to do my exercises or I'm not, or I'm going to keep eating and or whatever, I'm going to lose control. And it's kind of easy to spiral out of control, right down that. We know that story all too well. I think most people
Yeah.
have a, I've lost control, screw it, I might as well keep going. And I always tell people, if you get to that pivotal moment where you can identify, okay, this is where I might start spiraling, and you give yourself 3 seconds to say, how can I spiral up one spiral? Just one.
Mm.
What would be one thing that I could spiral up? Because I believe that making, quote, wrong choices is actually really good for us. I think overeating is a gift because guess what it does? It signals your body to say, "Hey, something's off here." Like I was
Mhm.
stressed, I overate, right? Emotional eating is a gift because it's telling us something that our body is trying to cue us. It's trying to give us a signal. Hey, you're stressed, you're tired, you need to deal with this. And you're
Mhm.
using food and it's not working, right? But there's something here and it's the same concept is okay, if I've got this root identity that my body is worthy of being nurtured and everything, and then from there I say, well, yeah, I'm worthy of making these better choices. And I know that I'm not immune from hard things and bumps and overeating sometimes, but I know how to realign quicker. And that's what that spiral will do for me. I can identify this pivotal moment of, I'm not going to do this today. I'm going to skip this exercise that Amanda gave me because it's hard, right? Um, and in that moment you say, "Hey, I know you." Like you kind of name it.
Mhm.
You're trying to get me to spiral out of control here. What can I do to spiral up once? Maybe I'll do two of the exercises she gave me and I'll just start there.
Mhm.
Or maybe, if you've overeaten or whatever, okay, you know what? I did not eat a good meal. I'm going to actually go eat a meal and then we're going to revisit this later. And just that one spiral, you just get the opportunity to keep saying, what's one more spiral that I can do? And it's a game changer for anyone that is willing to try it.
Yes, because you're keeping your expectations in check, aren't you? You're saying, I just want to get one click better instead of trying to go to a 10. You're trying to go from maybe a 4 to a 5 or a 5 to a 6 instead of like from a 4 to a 10. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, that is gold.
So personally, this is a good personal story. I am training for an obstacle course race right now, a pretty
Oh,
hard
excellent.
one.
Uh-huh.
And I've never done pull-ups. I've never cared, I guess. I've it's just never been part of my training regime. And I am starting from zero. I started from zero and it was painful, okay?
Yes.
It's a little bit painful right now because I'm like, I am never going to get this. It feels so hard. But each day I show up and I do my exercises. And right now I'm just doing scapular squeezes like and hanging and trying to activate those muscles. And it's so interesting because I had a moment at the gym the other day where I was like, is this even doing anything? Is this working? Like it feels sometimes hard. Sometimes the little things that we're doing in our body are not as noticeable as we want them to be, right? They're not a medal winning thing or they're not a PR, but they're structural and they're doing so much good inside, but we're not seeing it. And it was really cool because I had a moment where I like got up on the bar and I held it for like 10 seconds longer than I normally do. And then I did a
Wow.
few more, kind of like I call them fake pull-ups, but scapular squeezes.
Yep.
And I was like, you know what? I'm getting stronger. I can feel it. And I was in the
Mhm.
car the other day and I was feeling my forearms and I was like, okay, I can feel that my grip strength is getting stronger, but it just takes that time. And
Yeah.
exactly what you said is it takes it really takes like that daily investment. I mean, how do you save money? You put a
Mhm.
daily investment in. And when
Mhm.
you're putting more deposits in than you are doing withdrawals, right? Maybe the exercises that you're doing were a lot of withdrawals. And Amanda comes in and says, hey, we need to make some deposits in your body so that you can appropriately make these withdrawals, right? And you can do these things for your lifestyle with the deposits of here's some exercises you need to follow, then we can show up in the way that we want to.
Yeah, that is a great way to put that in terms of deposits and withdrawals. I love that. That is really, really good. I I feel like I hear this story often, and it's sort of it's kind of an example of what you're talking about, where a client will come in and they have this sort of shamed look on their face, and I'll say, how did the week go? And they'll say, well, I was feeling so good, I decided to do fill in the blank. My favorite story was of the guy who had debilitating back pain, like really was, he felt like he was never going to be out of chronic back pain. And after about 4 weeks, we had him pretty pain free. Like he was coming in with his head held high and his shoulders back, and he was so excited about his progress. And then he comes in a week later after his really awesome fourth session or something, fifth session, and he has this kind of hangdog look. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, I was feeling so good, I decided to completely refloor my living room this weekend. So
Oh
he's,
no.
on his hands and knees putting in a hardwood floor all weekend. And so of course he is miserable by the
Yeah.
time I saw him. But I hear this story so often. And what I always tell people is, there's a good side and a bad side to that story. And I've even told people I expect that story. There's a good side and a bad side, because the good side is it means you were feeling so good that you had some kind of false sense of security that your body was ready for this big thing, whatever the big thing is, whether it's a 5-mile run or laying a new floor, or, I mean, whatever. I hear all sorts of different versions of this story. And the bad news is that your body's coming back with some feedback for you saying, no, we are not there yet. But the good news is that most of the time, at least as far as I know, because I guess if people did that and didn't come back, I would never know. But usually they come back and they say, okay, what do I do? Because I really love that feeling. I want to get it back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because the body will give you feedback. Like it definitely lets you know if you have crossed that line where it was not prepared for what you threw at it. That's like making a massive withdrawal and going into some serious red on your bank account. You just didn't have as much in the account as you thought you did. So, how do we build up your accounts, right?
Yeah.
So, in terms of daily motivation, so, we've talked a little bit about this root cause, which I love, the mindset of I'm going to steward my body, I'm going to take care of my body. Are there any other tips and tactics you have for people to kind of stay sort of between the guardrails, so to speak, on a daily level and feel like they're moving forward if they've, had some major setbacks, like my guy who, sort of blew himself up with the flooring?
Yeah. And I love it because once we've got that identity and the commitment, right? You've made
Mhm.
that choice, like, I'm committed to this, then it is more tactical. It's about being, I
Yeah.
guess I'd say strategic.
Yeah.
Because we all have habits that we wouldn't necessarily say, like, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah.
But we still do it. We get ready in the day, we get dressed, we shower, we brush our teeth, right? There's certain things that most of us do every day. But I wouldn't say, like, yeah, I really want to go take the time to shower and get ready for the day when I have 40 million other things going on.
Yep.
And so it then from there, once we're like, okay, I'm committed to this outcome, it really is as simple as um, putting it in your day. And I
Mhm.
think people are, I guess, the simplicity kind of gets us where we're like, I don't know. But one strategy that I love to teach people is to habit stack. You already have things that you're doing throughout your day. Is
Right.
there a way you can find something that you're already doing and add a habit already to it? So if you are already brushing your teeth, then you'll floss, right? That's a if you're not flossing, but you're already brushing your teeth, you'll floss. I have a cute client who this is funny. She says every time after she goes to the bathroom, she does 5 squats. So she just like is trying to get stronger and she's like, I just know like that's my fun habit.
Yeah.
But put it in your schedule because the truth is motivation is kind of an interesting subject which we could like talk about for a long
Mhm.
time. But motivation gives us like a wave. And what
Mhm.
happens usually is that the wave crashes, right? We need to learn how to kind of ride the wave, keep that motivation coming
Mhm.
because that initial motivation, if we try to rely on that every time, we can't because we're going to experience ups and downs and tired, right? And you're not motivated when you're tired. You're not
Nope.
motivated when you're overwhelmed. So you need to
Yep.
create a strategy that says,
Mhm.
okay, I recognize that I don't have to be motivated for all of this. But I have a strategy here that this is important to me. This is important to
Mhm.
my body. So I'm going to fit it in here and I'm going to schedule it.
Yeah.
I'm going to share this with you too. I'll find a link. I have a episode called The Sweet Spot of Exercise.
Mhm.
And we really have to find, and I'm not going to go too deep into it here, but we really do have to find the mix of how can I find enjoyment in this right now that makes me do it right now
Yep.
and connect with the future me that is grateful that I did it right now. Because there has to be some sort of reward or outcome right now, or we're not going to do it, right?
That's true. Mhm.
You know, not having, let's say like a knee replacement in 20 years, that doesn't get you out of bed right now to do your exercises.
Yep.
So we have
Or
to
even
find
in 1 year.
exactly. That's so true. Or a week
Yeah.
down the road, if we're being honest.
Yeah. I have people closer and they struggle with it still, it's
Yeah.
looming and it's like, "Oh, still don't wanna do it."
Exactly. So it's about strategy, but also saying, is there some way I can make this enjoyable? And I always tell my clients, find something unique. Is it a podcast episode you only listen to when you do that exercise? Is it maybe you have to walk on the treadmill and it's a show that you only watch when you do that? Or a
Mhm.
certain playlist that you only get? Or do you do it in a special place? Or do you outside? Or do you get to wear a special outfit? Or whatever, where it's like this makes this kind of fun for me, or like I get a special like electrolyte drink and that's when I get a drink it is when I do my exercise, so that
Yep.
it's exciting for us. If we can combine those, right, strategy where hey, I'm going to put it in my schedule because I've made it a choice and it's going to fit right here because I'm already doing this, let's add it on.
Mhm.
And enjoyment, how can I find some enjoyment out of the process?
I love this because I think, we talked earlier about the foundation of the mindset of stewarding the body, which I think is beautiful and so incredibly important. And it kind of gets back to the why. I'm always asking clients, why is this so important to you? And trying to get them to dig down to something super compelling. But I think that that leads into that stewarding the body, like making sure you're taking good care of the body. And then I think to your point, we also have to add something on top of that, like a strategy, because sometimes that mindset is noble, but it isn't enough to get them out of bed when they would rather rest longer or sleep a little later, go to bed later. That's the one I hear about a lot is, I go to bed at 11 o'clock, and for me to get up 30 minutes earlier to do your exercises, it's asking too much. So then I'll say, well, can you go to bed 15 minutes earlier and just get up 15 minutes earlier so that you can do the exercises. And we try to wiggle those two ends a little bit because sleep's important too.
Yes.
So, I mean, we have to kind of find those little tactics that folks can use to not just understand that they're taking care of their body. That's such an important place to start. And then the little tactics on top of that. Well, what's your strategy going to be to make sure they happen? And I think scheduling it is excellent. And then all the things you said about finding some kind of little reward or something that makes it fun, something that makes it pleasurable again and makes it kind of a treat, right? Like you can look forward to something when you're making that decision to exercise. Because let's face it, you got to make that decision every single time, right? Like, I think for a lot of us, you're having to make a decision every single time. It's not automatic yet. That's why we're having the conversation.
Yeah, and as you were talking, I was just thinking about kids and how, it's so fun to be like, this is, here's a reward for doing this. Like we do a lot of that behavior.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but we get out of that as adults because we're just like, oh, I have to do all these things. And
Hmm.
if something feels like one more thing for you, it's never going to last. It's not.
Yeah.
And so if you can create something where it's like this is a reward, this is good for my body. As you were talking about the sleep, I can't relate at all to anyone that wants to stay up later because I, first of all, I'm totally like a morning person. But I know the difference in my day when I don't sleep enough. It is very obvious. And when I do sleep enough. And so for me, it's like, that's not even worth it. That's not even worth
Yeah.
it. Even if I want to stay up because my husband, he stays up really late, like really late and go to bed early. And um, that's sometimes hard, but I know that that's what's best for my body. And I enjoy going to bed early, and it helps me in the long term as well.
Yeah, I feel very similar to that. I'm a morning person as well, and I go to sleep early to the chagrin of my 12-year-old daughter whose clock is now shifting and she wants to stay up later and sleep later. And it's like, whoa, we have a real difficulty with that. But don't you think that there's a little bit of a connection between lack of sleep, like, well, let's say not optimal amounts of sleep. So it doesn't even mean that you're really struggling with insomnia or anything major. Like maybe you're just getting 6 hours of sleep a night and the ability to stick to something that, I mean, like, right? Because your willpower will deteriorate if you're tired, you're not sleeping. I think that could be a major contributing factor.
Yeah, I mean, physiologically, things change. Hormonally, things change. We
Yeah.
can't rely on our body's signals as well when we are sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Period. End of story, right? It's just
Mhm.
our body is not able to give us the correct signals when we're sleep deprived. And so that's where we tend to overeat, and tend, like begets like. When you feel worse, you want to do worse, right? When you feel
Mhm.
better, you want to do better. And it's the same thing. If you are sleep deprived, no amount of willpower, like I gumption, can get you to change that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and the body's already stressed and kind of broken down, and the last thing it wants you to do is push it farther, right? It's kind of
Yes.
in a state where it's like, you need to let me rest, not push me farther. But yeah, that's an interesting little factor in all this too, is the effect of sleep on willpower, I think. Because I mean, even with all of the tactics and tools, we still have to have some willpower to make all this happen. I mean, it's
Yeah.
for a lot
Yeah.
of us, it's not easy.
There has to be that motivator, right? There has
Yes.
to be a spark. And that's really what that is. It's like, it's kind of a spark to be like, I want to change something. Or maybe your doctor has said you need to change something. I used to get a lot of people that would be like, I need to do this. And I would have to kind
Mhm.
of shift their mindset to say, well, your doctor's not here, you're here. So can we change that mindset to, I want to be here because I want to support my body. Even if
Yeah.
they said I need this, I'm going to change that to, no, I really do want to be here because this is important to me.
Yeah, I think that's super important that it is coming from inside yourself and not from an external source, somebody saying you should do this or you need to do this. I see that with my daughter a lot, and she, is an athlete and has to train for things. And there are times where she'll say, well, I have to do X, Y, and Z for practice, or I have to, and I'll look at her and say, well, why? Is it serving you? Are you doing this for you? Or are you doing this for your coach? And I tell you, what she shows up like in practice, how she shows up in practice is very dependent on whether she's there for the coach or whether she's there for herself. And I think that's true for all of us, right? Like if we're there because we think we have to do it, it's very different from we're there because we know this is something important to us.
I love that.
Yeah, finding that internal motivator.
Yeah.
This has been such a great conversation, Elizabeth. Is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with in terms of something that you want to make sure they don't forget, or, like a bottom line, a wrap up?
Yeah. You are capable of knowing and meeting the needs of your own body. Create that connection. I think sometimes people might come to us, as practitioners and say, tell me what to do. And there's some need for that. We do have to trust the experts. We have to trust the process. But also don't forget that you have the ability to steer the ship, and your body is the one giving you those cues. And so you need to connect with that and remember, oh, I am capable of meeting these needs and knowing what they are long term. And this is something that I've got to master, basically.
Yes. Ah, such good words of advice. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining me today. And as I mentioned before, I will definitely put the links to the podcast episode with Elizabeth and me in the description, all about posture and back pain. So be sure to look that up if you're interested in that. And then Elizabeth's also going to share a link to another podcast that she did on exercise, right? Like coaching through exercise. So I think that will be super helpful. And don't forget, reach out if you all have questions. Love to help you any way I possibly can. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us today. Until next time, be well.